Okay, natural resources class. Today's topic is agricultural subsidies or farm subsidies. Basically, the concept that the federal government is paying farmers in this country to do certain things or for certain things or to not do certain things. But the bottom line is to subsidize or to make our food cheaper. Basically, that's what's going on. Were it not for farm subsidies, we would pay more for our food. It's kind of interesting because we pay more for our taxes. We pay either way. There have been historically forces that attempted to remove subsidies unsuccessfully to this point. We'll talk about some of those government programs that attempted to do that, but it is still the system we have in place today. I believe Cole the Corn Star, in his video I had you watch on how much money do farmers make, touched on subsidies that the farm that he, his dad, and his brother work, how much subsidies they get. And we're going to look into it in just a little more detail. There's so much detail here that it can be dizzying, so I'm just going to scratch the surface. There have been some sort of, to start out with, let's look at what maybe you're being told by some people in the media or in online. This is a page that's put out by the Environmental Working Group, and they do provide us with some interesting data here in just a second here. But when you Google subsidies for them, this is what comes up. Taxpayer supports goes mostly to large profitable corporations or large profitable operations, not sustainable family farms. There's that word, sustainable. Interesting how they separate profitable operations from sustainable family farms. It says that truly need the help. We're working to change a badly broken system. And so there's a line drawn between profitable operations and sustainable family farms, and I think they would say that that is created by our current system of subsidies. Well, okay, that's one view on it. So let's go look at the Sierra Club. Again, I googled farm subsidies there, and lots of articles come up. This is one that came up. I thought I would go down here to this third paragraph. Kind of gets to the crux of the matter. It says we ended up instead with a bloated grotesquerie of subsidies totaling $180 billion. The largest 10% of farmers like Cargill and J.G. Boswell continue to receive 70% of that sum. Now that's an interesting statement, since Cargill, they're not farmers. They are grain traders. They have lots of businesses. Cargill is a Minnetonka company. It's named after their founders, a couple of gentlemen from Iowa. It's the largest non-public family-held company in the world. They said if it was public, it would be like 15th on the Fortune 500, ahead of AT&T, I think is what I read somewhere. It's a huge company, right there with S.C. Johnson Wax. Another private company, but at any rate, they're not farmers. J.G. Boswell, again, James G. Boswell was a very successful farmer in California, formed a company, and now is a large cotton farmer, among other things, out there. He is a farmer, but it's interesting how they will sort of lump anybody that has anything to do with agriculture into that farmer category. Well, that's not the case. At any rate, it goes down. The net effect is that taxpayers down here will finance big corn, big pig, big cotton, and their big brethren in driving the remaining family farmers out of business. So there's this distinction between big operators and family farmers, sustainability and big bucks. Okay, well, we'll kind of flesh that out just a little bit here. I went to the Humane Society. You say, well, I thought the Humane Society was just about puppies and kitties. No, they're not. They have a political activist side to them, and you need to know this, what they stand for, to decide whether or not they're an institution or organization you want to fund. So they do puppies and kitties, but they also, when I googled farm subsidies right here, I didn't get much on subsidies, but of course they want to ban trophy hunting, fur-free animal testing, improving the lives of farm animals. Well, that sounds good. What does that mean? So there again, improving the life of farm animals, disaster preparedness, all good stuff. And then how well do you know farm animals? Do you know farm animals? Sorry. Good question. I wonder how well do they know farm animals? So they want to prevent farm animal cruelty. I wonder if they really know why things are done on a farm. We will definitely get more into that. Factory farming air pollution. Well, that's bad. Okay. Criminal charges in California against a hen factory. Curb farm animal confinement. Yep. Let's just let all those chickens go free range, and the coyotes will feast. I'm getting a little cynical here. At any rate, yeah. So it's interesting. If I go back to the first one here. There's generally a negative impression of subsidies. We're handing out money to rich farmers, and we are doing that at the expense of small family farms or sustainable family farms. Well, what are subsidies? Really, they began back in the Depression. Remember, fall of the stock market in 1929. It brought on the Great Depression. All through the 30s, times were tough. And in an attempt to bolster our farm community, the government instituted this concept of parity. And this came about in 1933. And the concept was that a farmer should at least get for a crop what it cost him or her to grow the crop. And you'll see that in your notes on farm programs. Parity was the first attempt. Again, lots of detail here possible. I'm going to try to skim over the surface. Generally, there are 4 types of farm programs now. Underlying most of them is still continues to be this concept of parity, that a farmer ought to at least get for the crop what it costs them to grow it, and hopefully a little bit more. Well, how does that flesh out in today's system? Well, there are commodity programs. That's the number one, the first one I believe on your list. And really, this is an attempt to use the market system to control price by controlling production and availability of commodities. If you have fewer commodities and higher demand, you will have higher price. If you have a lot of commodities, you're not going to have as much demand, you're going to have lower price. And that's the concept here, basic market economy. So how did this actually take shape? Well, there's a number of ways that this actually occurred. One was by a type of a loan. Loans is a separate category a little farther down there, number 3, I think. But this was a certain kind of loan. And basically the farmers would loan money from the government against their crop that they hoped to produce. The government would give that money to the farmers. The farmers would grow the crop. When they harvested the crop, they would pay the government back the money and keep the extra. That's how it was supposed to work. If the farmers had a bad year and maybe they got hailed out or flooded out or droughted out, if you will, then they would just give the government whatever crop they grew, and the government would call it good. They wouldn't have to pay any additional back. They would not go in debt. That's how a commodity loan program would work. The catch was that, and you'll see this farther down towards the end, that the effects of this is that when the farmer initially applied for the loan, the government would pay them a per bushel rate for whatever commodity they were growing. And of course, the idea was that the farmer then would hopefully grow more or make more on it and make some money on it than just that base rate. The problem was that that base rate became the market rate. If the market sees that price and the government's such a big player in it, then that's going to sort of decide what the price for that commodity will be, and it kept the price low, because remember, it's based on parity, the farmer just getting enough to meet costs. So that was a problem with commodity programs that showed up. Another was commodity purchase and donation. The government basically created an artificial demand by buying up the excess production and putting in food shelves or give it away in school lunch programs or food for peace programs, that kind of thing. And that still goes on, food for peace program, school lunch program. But again, the government is the big player, and if it's free, like on food shelves, you can't always tell who's getting that food off the shelves. It isn't always people that are in need. And so it's just another way that that particular program played out. Um, Another one was there's a lot of them. I always get a kick out of the dairy price support program. I guess it's no longer functional, which is a good thing. It was until recently, but the basis of it was that the government would pay you so much money per pound of milk. The farther you were away from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, the more money you got. That's why you see these big farms in California. They even advertise around here. It's like a slap in the face. Are you kidding me? We should buy milk from California cows because they wear sunglasses in the commercials? I don't know. Well, the deal was there was such huge subsidies for that those dairies because they're so far from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that the government basically made them rich. Well, the thinking behind it was because Wisconsin, of course, is the dairy state, and they just chose Eau Claire, Wisconsin because I don't know why they chose Eau Claire, Wisconsin, but they wanted to cause there to be more dairy industry in places apart from Wisconsin, away from Wisconsin. So this was their attempt to stimulate that the growth of that industry elsewhere by putting those types of subsidies in place. So then if you look at your notes a little bit more, let's see, did I get through those? Yeah, I got through those. So number 2 was crop insurance. This is still a big deal. Crop insurance, if you're going to be a farmer, you're going to pay thousands of dollars to buy your seed in the spring of the year. You're going to have to loan money to do that, and the bank is going to want that loan secured. So they're going to they're going to force you to buy crop insurance so that if you lose the crop, you're still able to pay back the loan. You may just want to buy crop insurance because it makes good business sense, whatever. The government backs that program. So it's administered through private sector insurance companies, but the government sort of backs it. There are farm loans. These are loans for new farmers and disaster victims or new farmer disaster victims. They're kind of a specific separate category for those of you that are interested in starting your own farming operation. And then there are CRP programs, conservation programs. CRP is probably the biggest one currently. You might see signs like this. This has got a Pheasants Forever sign on it here. But what you're seeing in the screen here is CRP next to an agricultural field, probably corn stubble, I'm guessing. I'm not sure. Might be feed. Corn stubble. Anyway, Conservation Reserve, CRP program, sets aside land that is highly erodible or wetland. This looks like it may have some wetland in it here. At any rate, the government pays the farmer not to farm this, to make it, to establish native grasses on it, and it's been a boon for wildlife. It's currently a fairly widespread program. There are over 30 million acres in the United States that are enrolled in the CRP program, and oftentimes this is a place you want to go pheasant hunting, or this edge right here. Farmers will bid on how much they would take to set this land aside, and they would agree to do certain things, such as build these watering systems. Now that's not such a big deal here in Minnesota, but if you go out west, water is limiting. And one of the things a farmer might agree to do to get the government to accept his or her petition to enter the land in the CRP program is to build what's called a guzzler. This is a water collection system. This is about a 10 by 15 foot piece of roof with a gutter on the side and a downspout that goes into a water trough. And the idea here is that there would be water available for wildlife. Now, this 10 by 15 roof will fill a 150 gallon tank if you have a 1-inch rain. So these are really quite effective. And in the wild, this is what one can look like. Okay? Now, oftentimes that water tank is tucked under there more, but you will see, I've built these actually, and you will see paths to these water tanks. You're also supposed to put what's called a rat ramp in there, so that if some rodent or something falls in there, they can get out without contaminating the water. They're a pretty well thought out system, and that's just an example of what a farmer might do to get his or her land accepted into the CRP program. Common rates I've heard of in western United States, $25 to $50 per acre per year is what the government pays the farmer to keep that land enrolled. Commonly, the contracts will go for 10 years, and then they're subject to re-enrollment. One of the things that used to be done more commonly was require the farmer to burn that periodically to simulate the prairie fires that used to whip through the area. They don't do that so much anymore. They actually have them disc it now. So many fires got out of control. People burned farmsteads. It was kind of comical. Spring of the year, if it was a certain year, it got out of hand. Another thing that's kind of crazy is for the first part of CRP programs, they might encourage you to grow trees in your CRP land. I've actually had to go to CRP tracks and cut trees down because the general mood changed, and the wildlife experts decided those trees in western areas were not native, were not a good thing, so they made us cut them down. So there's some nuttiness to these programs too, but generally I think they're pretty good. Okay, so those are the four general types of program that the government tries to institute. And so we want to just kind of finally here take a little look through history at what happened with various farm programs. If you look in your notes, I highlight four of them, actually five of them, starting with 1996, the FAIR program. This was the first attempt by the government to really turn agriculture over to the markets, to remove the government and let the markets decide. And really, farmers embrace this. They want that. They don't want to farm the mailbox, as it's called. The joke in farm countries, you know why the brow of farmers' hats is rounded over so much, and that's so that they can fit in the mailbox to look for that government check. Well, 96 was an attempt to get away from that, and it really took the government out of planting decisions. You see, before, if you accepted government money, with some of these commodity programs, you had to agree to plant the crops that the government said to plant, and the acres they said to plant. And that was the government trying to control supply and demand. Well, this removed the government from that because, you know, the farmers know how they want to rotate their crops, what grows best on what land, and that was a good thing. And it lowered farm subsidies. The problem was the weather and the markets didn't cooperate, and there were some really bad years that followed, and we did not have the political, social, economic will, whatever you will call it, to sort of let this work. And so along comes the 2002 Farm Bill, Federal Farm Security and Rural Investment Act. And you can see the cost of it, about $18 billion per year. I think 1996 was significantly less than $18 billion per year cost. But the 2002 bill, it increased government control of program crops. Now, program crops are those crops that the government pays a subsidy on. And so if you look at some, this, you know, corn is king, it sure is. This, I think I put this on Moodle as well previously. There's corn harvest. There's wheat and wheat harvest. This is sorghum or milo. I wanted to have soybeans up there. Well, this is barley, oats, rice, and rice harvest. I should have had soybeans in there. I'm not sure. They would also be included. This is cotton. That's a program crop. The government pays money for farmers to grow cotton. And then peanuts is another one. Now you got to understand, these come and go by the year. Sometimes they are a subsidized crop and sometimes they're not. Okay, there's peanut harvest. And this one used to be until, I think it was, maybe just 5-10 years ago, this was one of the most subsidized crops of all. And it is tobacco. Yeah, surprisingly enough, the government paid money to put ads on TV to get you not to smoke, but subsidized the growing of tobacco. Well, they don't anymore. So those are program crops. So the 2002 Farm Bill, it increased government control of program crops, deciding what farmers grow and how much they grow of it. Increased money for, up arrow means increased money for CRP Conservation Reserve Program, so more acres were enrolled. Increased dollars for beginning farmers, but still there were no dollars for fruit, nut, and vegetable growers. They're considered farmers too, aren't they? Or, well, not in 2002, they're not. Along comes 2008. If you remember, that was the year the stock market crashed dramatically last time. The mortgage issue largely to blame for that. So economically, we were in hard times. There were direct payments for farmers. Now there were dollars for fruit, nuts, and berries. That was included. Now those were considered farmers and could get subsidies as well. And there was more money for beginning farmers. Now, 2008 says direct increased money for direct payments. A direct payment, the way that worked was, if you were a farmer and let's say you wanted to plant 100 acres of corn, you could take 85% of that, or 85 acres. You multiply that by the rate for corn, which is, let's say, about a quarter a bushel, and then multiply that times your standard yield. Let's just say back then it was 120 bushels per acre. That's what you grew on average. If you multiply those together, you would get, well, somewhere around $2,500 for that 100-acre field of corn. That's what the government would pay you to grow corn. That's how direct payments worked. Acres grown, average yields, government would give you payments for that. Again, the government's paying you money to keep the price low, and then, you're paying taxes to allow the government to do that. Kind of crazy system. Well, 2008 and on, well, economically we might have had a hard time generally, but shortly after 08, farm economy skyrocketed. Farmers were doing wonderfully. We highlighted some of that in the last lecture. And so there was no more political will for subsidies. And you can see in the 2014 bill, it ended the direct payments. Unfortunately, not long after 2014, the farm economy started to tank again. So these farm bills are kind of just following the real situation by a 4 or 5 year period. But anyway, 2014 ends direct payments. 80% goes to nutrition programs. 19% goes to commodity conservation programs for farmers. 2018, look at the money per year. 2014, $98 billion per year. 2018, actually it was 2019 before it got signed, I think, $173 billion per year. And its provisions were similar to the 2014 Farm Bill. When you look at then how much this means to farmers, the Environmental Working Group has kind of a fun site right here. You can go here, and because these are government subsidies, they sued, and this is public information. So I wanted to go to Kansas. I wanted to see how much my father-in-law made in government subsidies, and so I went here. This is kind of a terrible thing to do. And he lives in Sheridan County, and Kansas, and his name is David Pope. That's not Pop, it's Pope. And so I looked, and this is from the period 1995 to 2019. It's roughly 25 years. I looked, and oh my word, my father-in-law did pretty well. He got almost $900,000 from the federal government in that 25-year period. Actually, if you look at that, it'll break it down on a yearly basis. He was getting anywhere from, well, there's 26 on up to 86. I think there was a $90-some thousand one in there, 86,000, 98,000. But there was 4 or 5 years there, so that's over 20 years. He was doing pretty good. Wow. Okay, but that is over 20 years. So then I thought, okay, since there's so much vilification of these large producers that are getting all this farm subsidy money and squeezing out the smaller family farms, sustainable family farm, that I thought, well, let's put a little face. Let's put a face on who these large corporate farms are. Okay, so here I'm going to show you another one. This is some farmers. Actually, some young men that received quite a bit of fame, if you will, because they got ticked off, like many farmers are, with how they were being portrayed in the public. So if you look at these are top recipients of subsidies. So if you look over here, top recipients, 1995 to 2019, that's what I'm looking at here. And if you look at the list here, you can see incorporated, that's a corporation. Here's a trust, here's a revocable trust. This is incorporated. Now these are just regular people, folks. They're not corporations per se like you're thinking of, like a boardroom in some big city. These are just farmers that have incorporated because it made business sense. Trusts, corporations. You can see it right here. Peterson Farm and Livestock Incorporated. Oh, they're only number 36 out of hundreds in Assyria, Kansas. They got almost $500,000 in that time frame. They must be just, you know, really big, a small family farmer suppressing type people. Well, I'm going to put a link to a website. This website right here. Actually, I'll get you to the first part of it. I'm not going to play it because I get arrested by YouTube for that. So it's a parody. Now these guys, the Peterson Farm brothers that you'll see in the video, they put this parody together and it just took off. They were on the late night talk shows, and they're still doing this. They're I think all three married now. They're all continuing to farm in the area, but they're real spokespeople for farming and trying to get the truth out there as they would see it of what's happening in agriculture. So when somebody talks about these large corporations that are sucking in all the money, I wanted to put a face on that. And so I want you to go look at that video clip and just enjoy it. It's just kind of a fun thing. They've got a bunch of others too. And the last thing I want to leave you with, there's this impression that the government is subsidizing these big farms with all this money. So there were these farm bills that I went through. So focus with me, folks. When we talk about a farm bill, that is the name of it. They are called farm bills. But in reality, this is the 2014 Farm Bill. This is where the money goes. Over 80% of it goes to nutrition programs. Ladies and gentlemen, these are food stamps. That money isn't going to farmers. That's going to SNAP programs, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps. It's going to urban, suburban areas largely, not only. The only part of the Farm Bill that farmers get is this 20% over here. More recently, in an attempt to rectify that a bit, nutrition programs get 76%. A little more of the Farm Bill actually goes to farmers. So when you hear all this money, the billions and now hundreds of billions that are going to the Farm Bill on an annual basis, just remember, roughly 24% of that actually goes to farms. The rest of it goes to people enrolled in the food stamps, in the Supplemental Assistance Program. Not that they shouldn't get it, but that you should know where that money goes. It isn't just farmers sucking down all that, big rich farmers sucking down all that big money and suppressing sustainable family farms. It's going to food stamps. All right, that's it for today, and have a good day. Thank you.